Every old building has a story, but some stories are straight up terrifying. We are going to the most haunted places on planet Earth to see if the stories are real. We're talking about the Roman Colosseum and the Tower of London. Today, we're exploring places so scary, people say ghosts are literally screaming in the hallways. The only question is, can you handle it? Some places in the world are so messed up that the line between past and present just disappears. These spots have seen so much tragedy, they're basically permanent scars on the planet. These aren't just old buildings, they're places where something horrible happened, and it never stopped happening. Hey, friends, we meet again. I'm Eli. Today, we're going to the most infamous haunted places in the entire world. We're gonna cut through the myths and find out what's actually real. First, we're hitting the Roman Colosseum, where thousands of people died. And then we're going to the Tower of London, a place with so much death, its ghosts are more famous than its guards. So buckle up, because we are about to find out what happens when you visit the world's most haunted locations. Section 1. The Roman Colosseum Echoes of the Arena. Our journey begins in the heart of the ancient world, at a monument that represents both imperial glory and unbelievable brutality, the Roman Colosseum. Construction on this massive amphitheater began under Emperor Vespasian around AD 72 and was completed in AD 80 by his heir, Titus. For nearly 4 centuries, it was the world's epicenter for public spectacle that could seat up to 80,000 people. But this wasn't ordinary entertainment, this was entertainment written in blood. Gladiators, who were often slaves or prisoners of war, were forced into mortal combat for the amusement of the crowds. They fought each other, and they fought wild, exotic beasts brought from the farthest corners of the Roman Empire. Public executions were also a common sight. While exact numbers are impossible to confirm, some historical estimates suggest that hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives within these walls, not to mention about 1 million animals. Just imagine the sheer volume of fear, pain, and violent death all concentrated in one place. It's an energy so powerful, many believe it could never truly fade away. Today, the Colosseum is a magnificent ruin, but when the crowds of tourists leave and silence falls, it's said a different kind of life emerges. Staff, security guards, and visitors have all reported chilling, unexplainable things for decades. Shadowy figures are often seen moving through the arched corridors, sometimes resembling a Roman soldier still standing guard. Some have even reported the ghostly sight of an entire section of the stands filling up with a spectral crowd, only to vanish moments later. The most common reports, however, are auditory. People claim to hear the disembodied clash of swords, the mournful groans of the wounded, and sudden, piercing screams echoing through the underground tunnels, known as the hypogeum. Visitors often describe sudden, strange drops in temperature, a heavy sense of dread, and the unnerving feeling of being touched or pushed by something that isn't there. Among the specific spirits said to linger nearby is Valeria Messalina, the third wife of Emperor Claudius, who was executed for conspiracy against her husband. Her restless spirit reportedly wanders the nearby grounds, forever searching for a new lover. The Colosseum is a stark reminder that the ground we walk on is layered with history. The sounds and sights reported today might just be the echoes of that suffering, forever trapped within the greatest arena the world has ever known. Section 2, Poveglia Island, the Isle of the Damned. Just a short boat ride from the romantic canals of Venice lies an island so feared that local fishermen refuse to go near it. It is a place with such a dark and tortured past that it is strictly off limits to visitors. This is Poveglia, often called the Island of No Return, and considered by many paranormal investigators to be one of the most intensely haunted places on Earth. Poveglia's sinister history began when the bubonic plague was tearing through Europe. As a major port city, Venice used the isolated island as a quarantine station starting in the 18th century. But as the plague grew worse, Poveglia's role became far more grim. It became a dumping ground. Anyone showing the slightest symptom was forcibly taken from their family and exiled to the island to die. The island was quickly overwhelmed. Tens of thousands of plague victims perished here. With no room for proper burials, the bodies were thrown into massive pits and burned. It is a morbid local legend that the soil of Poveglia is made up of more than 50% human ash. Local lore also makes the unverified claim that over 100,000 souls were lost on this tiny patch of land, but the island's horror story wasn't over. In 1922, a psychiatric hospital was built on Poveglia, adding a new layer of psychological suffering. It's here that the island's most disturbing legend was born. The tale, which is pure folklore, tells of a doctor who worked at the asylum and performed bizarre experiments on his patients, including crude lobotomies, supposedly in the hospital's tall, ominous bell tower. According to the legend, the doctor himself began to see the tortured spirits of plague victims and his own mutilated patients. Driven mad by the very ghosts he denied, the story says he threw himself from the top of the bell tower. To this day, some locals claim that on quiet nights, you can still hear the bell tolling from the island, even though the bell itself was removed decades ago. Those few who have managed to illegally visit Poveglia return with terrifying stories. They talk about an overwhelming feeling of dread, of hearing disembodied voices screaming, and of being followed by shadowy figures through the decaying hospital. One of the most heartbreaking spirits said to haunt the island is that of little Maria, a young plague victim who is supposedly seen wandering the shoreline, crying for her parents. Poveglia is not just a place with a dark history, it's an island saturated with death, where thousands of souls are said to be trapped in a cycle of suffering, making it a true island of the damned. Alright, we are halfway through and the locations are about to get even crazier. If you think you can handle the rest of this video, prove it by subscribing right now and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. You do not want to get left behind. Section 3, Lawang Sou, the Thousand Doors of Fear. Our next location takes us to Semarang, Indonesia, to a colonial-era building whose name in Javanese means thousand doors. This is Lawang Sou. While it doesn't literally have 1,000 doors, its hundreds of archways and windows create a dizzying, maze-like effect, as if designed to confuse not just the living, but the dead, too. Built between 1904 and 1919, Lawang Sou was originally the headquarters for the Dutch East Indies Railway Company, but its beauty hides a brutal past. During World War II, invading Japanese forces seized Lawang Sou and turned its basement into a horrific prison and torture chamber. The basement of Building B became a place of unimaginable suffering. Prisoners were brutally interrogated, tortured, and executed. One of its most horrifying features was a tiny squat prison, where multiple prisoners would be crammed into a small, water-filled box to drown. After the war, the building became the site of the Battle of Semarang, where Indonesian freedom fighters clashed with Japanese soldiers, adding another layer of bloodshed to its history. With a past like that, it's no surprise that Lawang Sou is widely considered one of the most haunted places in Indonesia. Even after its restoration as a museum, staff and visitors continue to report terrifying encounters. The basement remains the epicenter of the paranormal activity. People report hearing disembodied screams, the rattling of chains, and the overwhelming smell of blood. Many claim to have seen the apparitions of headless spirits wandering aimlessly through the dark corridors. One of the most famous reported entities is the ghost of a young Dutch woman who is believed to have taken her own life in the building. But perhaps the most feared spirit at Lawang Sou is the Kuntilanak. In Indonesian folklore, the Kuntilanak is a terrifying female ghost with long black hair and a white dress. Multiple night guards have reported seeing her standing silently at the end of a long hallway, only for her to vanish when they get closer. The countless doors of Lawang Sou seem to act as portals, not just between rooms, but between our world and a realm of spirits who have never found peace. Section 4, Eastern State Penitentiary, a prison for the soul. From Indonesia, we cross the globe to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to a fortress that looks more like a medieval castle than a prison. This is Eastern State Penitentiary, a place that didn't just want to confine the body, but to break the soul. When it opened in 1829, it was a revolutionary and terrifying experiment in criminal justice. The system practiced here was known as the Pennsylvania system, based on total isolation. The goal was to force penitence on inmates through complete solitude. Prisoners were kept alone 23 hours a day. They ate alone, exercised alone in small, individual yards, and were forbidden from speaking to or even seeing another inmate. When a prisoner was moved, a thick hood was placed over their head to keep them from seeing anyone or mapping the prison's layout. Guards even wore felt covers over their shoes to muffle their footsteps, creating an environment of perpetual, unnerving silence. This profound isolation was supposed to make inmates reflect on their sins, but it often just drove them insane. The psychological torment was immense, and many prisoners lost their minds in the crushing quiet. The system was eventually abandoned in 1913, but the residue of all that suffering seems to remain. Today, the crumbling cell blocks of Eastern State are considered a hotbed of paranormal activity. Ghost hunting shows and paranormal investigators flock here, and many leave with a story. Cell Block 12 is infamous for reports of disembodied, cackling laughter, while Cell Block 6 is known for shadowy figures that dart along the walls. In Cell Block 4, visitors have reported seeing a gallery of ghostly faces appearing on the walls, their expressions twisted in anguish. One of the prison's most famous inmates was the gangster Al Capone. According to prison lore, Capone was tormented day and night by a ghost he called Jimmy, believed to be the spirit of one of the victims from his St. Valentine's Day massacre. Other inmates reported hearing Capone screaming in his cell, begging Jimmy to leave him alone. Then there are the sounds, phantom footsteps pacing in empty cells, the clang of a cell door slamming shut with no one there, and distant, sorrowful wails that seem to come from the very stones of the prison itself. Eastern State Penitentiary was designed as a prison for the living, but in its quest to break their spirits, it may have created a prison for the dead. Section 5, The Tower of London, a royal haunting. For our final location, we travel to London, England, to a site that has been a royal palace, a fortress, a prison, and a place of execution for over 900 years. This is the Tower of London, a place so drenched in history and bloodshed that its ghostly residents are as legendary as the crown jewels it protects. Founded in the 11th century, the tower has been at the center of English history for nearly a millennium. Kings and queens have lived here, but many more were imprisoned and died within its walls. The stones of the tower have witnessed centuries of political intrigue, betrayal, and murder. It's no wonder it's considered one of the most haunted places in the United Kingdom. The most famous of all the tower's ghosts is the tragic figure of Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII. After she failed to produce a male heir, she was accused of treason and beheaded on May 19, 1536. Her spirit, however, is said to have never left. Her headless body has reportedly been seen gliding through the corridors of the White Tower and near the Queen's house, where she was held before her execution. One of the most well-known sightings was reported in 1864, when a soldier on duty saw a white female figure approaching. He challenged it, and when it didn't stop, he charged with his bayonet, only to pass straight through it and faint in terror. But it is far from the only spirit here. The ghosts of the princes in the tower are perhaps the most heartbreaking. In 1483, 12-year-old King Edward V and his 9-year-old brother, Richard, were imprisoned in the Bloody Tower by their uncle, who would soon become King Richard III. The two boys vanished, presumed murdered. Ever since, the small, ghostly figures of two boys in nightgowns have been seen clutching each other's hands, silently playing before fading back into the stone walls. The end. Call to action. From the sun-scorched stones of Rome to the foggy banks of the River Thames, we've journeyed through places where history's darkest moments have left an unforgettable stain. These aren't just spooky stories. They are the tragic legacies of real people whose lives were cut short by violence, disease, and despair. The Colosseum, Poveglia Island, Long Sou, Eastern State Penitentiary, and the Tower of London each holds a unique and terrifying power, an energy born from immense suffering. The countless eyewitness accounts, stretching back centuries, all suggest that something lingers in these places. They are monuments to history, but they are also memorials to the dead, tombs where some spirits seem unable to rest. After hearing these stories, you have to wonder, are these spirits still trapped, forever reliving their final moments? Or are they simply echoes of a dark past, imprinted on the very fabric of time itself? Maybe some secrets are best respected from a safe distance. Which of these places was the absolute craziest? Let me know in the comments which haunted place we should go to next. And if you're not too scared, go watch our other videos right now. Thanks for watching. Good luck sleeping tonight.